now we're 4 interviews in. We've got 1 more interview lined up, which will be good. Um, I don't know, how do you feel that, like I know we sort of recapped the Nick episode, but I don't think we've recapped the
Thomas
subsequent
one?
3. Yeah, we
Yeah,
never recapped the Thomas one, but I guess we might as well recap all 3 because, I mean, we can just
sure.
post this after. I think there's varying degrees of success across, like, so I've listened fully to the Nick one and the Thomas one. I think both were, reasonably good. I mean, it is tough listening to yourself talk, but I think the fact that we were friends with them beforehand, like, made things definitely a lot easier. Um, but yeah, I think they were not bad. In terms of, like, how they felt in the moment, I would say similar, like, the interviews with Nick and Thomas felt pretty easy. And then I would say, you know, I mean, I guess we're at this point we would have released them, but we did the interview with Rudy and then Tyler. Yeah, I feel like I definitely learned some stuff when you're interviewing people you don't know. It's a lot trickier. Like I knew him a little bit, but yeah, you don't like instantly have the rapport that makes it like just like a conversation. You actually have to do stuff to like make sure it flows.
Yeah, I thought that so I listened to both of them. I was pretty happy with them, actually. I thought they were fun to listen to. Maybe I'm a narcissist and people would disagree, but I genuinely enjoyed listening to it. I didn't find it like, "Oh, this feels like work and I have to keep it going." I just put it on while I was doing working, and then it's like went by like a normal podcast. So I like that, and I think it might have given us a false confidence though in our interviewing abilities, in that it did seem
Like
to
the
flow
first
pretty
you mean?
well. Even like the first three, like I thought Rudy's went quite well too.
Yeah.
Um, I felt like it had a good flow. Felt like we were getting into some like fun topics, getting into some of the I don't know, it felt like it had a natural flow to it, I guess. Whereas the last one we did with Tyler felt a little bit harder. And I haven't listened to it back yet. I haven't finished editing, which I'm going to do this weekend. But it definitely got the impression that maybe we need a little bit more structure for having like an introduction and
Yeah.
going with it with a little bit more planned out.
No, I think it was definitely our fault. Like the way it started, that he just came on and then like we were already recording and then we just like went into it. I think there was just like no hard start. So it was just like kind of awkward from the beginning. Like I think in hindsight, it would have been way better if we explained the podcast. Because obviously you hadn't met him. So it would have made sense to like introduce you, have a little bit of like discussion there, and then yeah, have him give like a bio of like who he is and what he does. Because if you're a listener, like I don't know if we want to add an intro or something, but it'd probably be confusing, like even who he is, because we didn't do any um like setup or anything like that. So I think that was something, and I know we talked about it afterwards, but I almost felt like I don't know. Like we need like a structure to get it started, but then we need to build some rapport early on too, I think. Like I think it's tough to just like randomly go into it with no firm intro, no firm start, and then just being like, so like what is your camera setup or something? Like it's just awkward. So I think that was definitely what I learned is like you need a hard structured start with some like set questions, and then like maybe keep it a little looser, a little less formal, build a little bit of rapport, and then from there I think it makes sense to go into like the actual real questions that we want answered.
Yeah, and we didn't really pitch ourselves that well because I think maybe he didn't
Oh,
fully
totally.
understand what we were
Totally, yeah,
going
it was just
for.
it was just, like, vague and confusing, like, I think all around, like, we didn't tell him what we're doing or what we're trying to do. We didn't ask him to explain who he was. We didn't, like, have a firm, like, "We're recording now." Like, I think there's value to the fact that, like, we're recording by the time they join, because then it's like we won't miss anything. But I almost wonder if it'd be easier if we just like talked for a bit beforehand and then we like said to them very clearly, like, okay, we're gonna start recording in 3, 2, 1, go. And then at least for the guests, like they have like this idea of like when it's on. Because I think it's just like kind of confusing. It's just like they're joining, it's like, oh, it's recorded. Now they're like, oh shit, like I need to be on, and it's just like a little all over the place.
Yeah, I guess my thinking was like in television, they have like a warm start. So you watch a show and it's immediately into it, and then they do their intro, and then they'll like get back into the show. And that's kind of how I was visualizing is sometimes like the banter, informal, like um, convo before is almost has a lot of really good stuff, and then we also might forget to turn it on, and we also, which we almost did with the Rudy episode, and
Yeah.
then we also lose possibly some like really interesting content to start, like we had with Thomas and Nick. I thought before we officially got started, so I'm kind of thinking we can just tell them it's recording, but we're not necessarily having to start right now. But then we do have maybe that informal talking, and then we make a deliberate attempt to like have our start our intro. So our intro would be explain ourselves, our pitch, and then have them go into explaining their background, and then we can kick off the flow. Because I am concerned, like we will forget to hit record and have a whole,
Yeah.
a whole episode, and oh yeah,
Oh,
halfway through we remember we didn't
it's so
record.
embarrassing. Yeah, it's like, "Hey, can you come back on?" Um, yeah, I think that okay, that so that makes sense. You're basically just, like, say, like, be recording from the start, but then, make sure we have, like, a hard start where we pitch ourselves. They get to talk about themselves and tell them who they are, and then that's when we go.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you
And
think?
then
I
I
think that
think
makes sense. As long we just need some structure, yeah. It's just
and
like this is like a theme of my life. It's just like no structure,
just
just going
parental
around.
supervision needed.
Like yesterday, I had a hockey game and we only had 8 guys, so it was like obviously we are gonna be short bench, but like we just never took a second to like talk it through. So no one knew what position they were playing like ever, and it was just like so bad. And it was just like, oh, this is a microcosm of my life. Just everything's just like confusing.
That's the best part though, when you're playing men's league, you can just blame other
I
people
mean,
for not
what
back checking and
yeah,
just float
would
around.
be fine if we didn't lose like 8-1 to a bunch of like hardos who were going very hard and celebrating their goals.
Yeah, there's
That
nothing
was the
worse
problem.
than men's league and the guys are celebrating really hard. Just something really
Uh,
aggravating.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of we could just have a men's league podcast, but yeah, it's, we probably
Do
could have
they
made it like 4-1.
do they ever have fights in yours over in
No,
Ontario?
no, it's like a bunch of like nerds. It's which is better, I will say, because it's just like right in downtown Toronto, so everyone's just like, white collar dude, so it's it's quite a bit different than like,
I feel
you
like
know.
that we had some good, fun
Oh,
times
yeah.
on ours, just bench clearing brawls, drug
No, I mean, I
dealers
was
on their,
oh,
uh,
yeah, I just
oh,
yeah, like, I remember playing against teams, and we'd be, like, 10 games into the season, and you would look at the standings before you played, and the team would have, like, 400 penalty minutes in 10 games, and you're just like, "What the fuck?" Like, you were just 19 with, like just got, like, braces off, and he was like, "What the hell is going on?" And I would be, like, nervous before the game 'cause it's just like, it's just, like, gonna be absolutely insane, but, yeah, no, this I
it
will
was
say
a
this
lot more
league's
entertaining though, like, that one where that one team we played on and the drug we had a drug dealer who got released, what, every couple weeks? I don't know, still don't know how that worked, but he would
yeah, I don't
go to
know.
jail for, like, a month and then get a, like, a week release or something, and then
Yeah, you can't
he was just so aggressive, and I remember we had that bench clearing brawl that one time, and there was just
yeah.
the refs were just not even trying to break the fights up, so it was just they would fight until guys got tired, too
Oh, I
tired
mean,
to
if I'm a
fight.
ref making, like, $20 an hour, like, there's no chance I'm getting in between, like, people fighting.
Yeah, no, it was eventful.
Anyways, we're off topic, but yeah, so, like, I do agree that, like, we need so, yeah, I think we're on the same page, like, you have a structure, you have a firm start, and then I think that just I don't know, it probably allows the guests to, like, relax a little bit because I do think if you're just, like, I don't know, kinda, like, confusing them, they don't know what's gonna be actually in the podcast and everything, like, it's gonna be tough to be natural, so I think this will help.
Yeah, and I think also the same thing can I think in the middle we can be a little more free flowing, but at the end too, the structure is important where
Yes, I
rather
agree.
than trailing off and being like, "I don't have any more questions. You got any more questions? Oh, okay, bye." We could
Yeah, no,
just
yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think we
agree.
should have like 2 questions I think should be I don't know, we decide on 1, maybe it's like, what's your future plans or things you wanna try? Let them promote themselves, and then that can be sort of the indication that we're, like, done, rather than trailing off and us you and me kind of, like, trying to non-verbally interpret if the other person has questions
I also
through a
think,
z
like yeah, I think it would be helpful if, as well, like, we both communicated to each other what questions we're gonna ask. Like, I don't wanna be too formulaic, but I think it would be helpful if, like, I knew that, like, I'm gonna ask this question, then you're gonna ask the next one, then you're gonna ask the next one. Because 'cause I'm finding we have, like, some long pauses where, like, I don't know if you're gonna ask the next question, if I should ask my next one. Like, it's never gonna be perfect, but I think the problem is when you're doing it over Google Meet as well, like, you can't pick up on those nuances of, like, see if the other person has a question coming. Um, so I think it might help it, like, flow a little bit better if, like, we both knew what questions we are gonna ask. We can, I guess,
I
like,
thought we kinda
all
did that though. Didn't we send question like, what we were about to ask?
I didn't really read yours, so I guess maybe that's the but, um, I think I yeah, but then just have the plan of just, like, I'll ask one, you ask one, I'll ask one, you ask one, and then, like, there will be some follow-ups and stuff, but, like,
See, the thing
uh
that I might struggle with that is I just kind of base my questions often, once you get into it, off something they said, or I'll
for
make
sure,
up a
yeah.
question, so it's a little tough. I didn't
Yeah, I
really
don't think
pick
it'll be
up on the
perfect.
fact that we had lots of dead silence though, so maybe
I think
it's a blind spot for me then.
there's just sometimes where, like, I wasn't sure if you were gonna jump in or not, which, I mean, it's not the end of the world.
I work in
Maybe it's
tech, so I'm, like, very comfortable with awkwardness and missing social cues are just a normal
yeah,
part of my daily existence, so,
yeah.
this might be a scenario where I just didn't even realize we had a problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we can listen to the last podcast and we can see,
Just like,
but,
"Man, we are firing on all cylinders." This is
yeah,
perfect.
I yes, and then I think, like, we should, the 2 of us, like, determine who's gonna ask the last question, what the last question is gonna be, because I think that would just, like, as you said, make a clear and concise end to it, which would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'm kind of finding with the timers handy too, because you can kind of see, okay, 5 minutes left, time to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Um,
no, for sure.
which, yeah, kind of ironic, I guess, but okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, yeah, I don't think you wanna be, like, too formulaic, but, um, I think that'll be good. I am enjoying the process of speaking with guests, like, I'm keen to keep getting more, like, I know, so all the 4 guests we've had, and then we have the 5th one lined up already. Um, but those 5, I guess, are just, like, our personal network, so, like, now I guess it might be tougher where we actually have to, like, reach out. I mean, I think the good news is that we have the website up, but I reached out to 2 people who I didn't know and haven't got a response from either, which I think is good because it's good to, like, get comfortable with that because that's gonna be part of the process, but, um, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like,
Are you
what are you
reaching out
thinking?
over email or social media? What's
Um, these 2 were actually, sorry, I should say there's 3 people I didn't get a response from. One was text, who I knew a little bit, and then one was an email, I guess, from someone I knew a little bit, and then one was a cold email.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, I think we
but
should
yeah,
also test out the script. Maybe we add in links to our social media, like LinkedIn or something in the pitch. We could also yeah, that's tough because I guess if, you don't necessarily know if they're even seeing it, if it's going to spam or if they're just not interested. So,
yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll never know. I mean, I think it is gonna be a volume game, like, we're not gonna have the highest hit rate, I'm sure, but, um, yeah, I mean, I think we just gotta keep trying. My guess would be that email is pretty efficient, but I guess I didn't really think about the spam thing.
I don't know, it's just if I get emails, I'm always like, "Oh, how did you get my email?" And I don't really take it as serious as if it's through, say, something that's social media based. It's more likely you can see their profile and just be, "Okay, this is a real person." Um, but maybe that's me. I also ignore any phone call that's not in my contact list, so I might not be the best example of networking.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, what are you thinking for reaching out to people? Like, do you have a list? Like, what is your plan?
Yeah, so I've got a list that the thing is some of them I actually really want to, like, talk to and I think would be cool, but they're a little bit too popular, I think, at this stage. Like, they're not, like, huge, but that's definitely something that I don't have a good list of ones yet that are, like, maybe, say, less than 5,000 followers or, so, yeah, I need to do some work that this weekend on that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Was it this
like,
Monday we've got the next one, or is that the following Monday?
it's Saturday.
Oh,
Saturday,
next
so like a
next
week
Saturday.
from today. Yeah, a
Okay,
week from today.
cool.
Um, so yeah, I mean, like, I think what we can do is like, I don't know, maybe compile a list because, like, again, we do have the next interview lined up already, but like, I don't know, I'm definitely keen to try and like have a backlog and like, even if we did like 3 in a week or something, like, I think that would be not bad because then we could like build a bit of a backlog. I know I went and found like some people online that, like, again, a lot of Instagram accounts. So I guess that's a good question. That's a good next question. Like, do we want to set up an Instagram account for our podcast and then we could DM people from that as opposed to just like having to DM from like our personal accounts?
Um, I guess I assumed the personal accounts would be better, but maybe, yeah, it's better to have the branded account. Um, yeah, I'm not sure on that, honestly. I think it's gonna be a bit of trial and error. I just don't know if I see tons of value of a social media account that we don't put lots of effort in, because I think that could almost be a negative signal where it's got no followers and we're only occasionally posting on it. And I guess that's my one hesitancy with like starting expanding outside of YouTube. And that's where I was thinking maybe using you connect through your personal one, but you link to the YouTube or the website. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you want to try an Instagram account, we can. It's just
No, I definitely understand your concerns. The only problem is like I don't think either of us are active at all on Instagram is my one concern that like it's like either way we're gonna have that problem of like I know what you're saying if someone saw an Instagram account with like 100 followers and we're occasionally posting, but like on my personal, it's just like I never post.
but I
So
also
I
find most of the people on Instagram have like a website link or something. Like I don't think you have to actually use Instagram, do you? You can usually just contact them by their
I see
through
what
their
you're saying. So
website.
like we wouldn't have to rely on Instagram that much anyway.
Yeah. I just feel like
Yeah,
Instagram is really rewards posting frequently, and it's like if you're not doing at least one a day.
yeah, that's fair. Um, yeah, okay. So basically, like we'll tend to rely on websites more often than just like emailing them from their website.
Yeah, and if it's not working, we can try something else. But yeah, I think it'll be good to start trying with like complete cold approaches and just see what the hit rate is, and we can maybe make notes of what your kind of template or approach is so that we can like learn from it. So maybe we find a certain pitch seems to work better, or including like links or like social proof, or and if that doesn't work, maybe we go back to like the drawing board and go back to more warm approaches through like, say, I know Rudy mentioned some artists that he knew, and we could say, hey, could you help introduce us, and go back to that approach. um,
Yeah. So basically, like we use connections of prior guests to get a guest. I mean, which I think is good, but yeah, ideally we're getting some like return on our cold messages at least, because then we can like expand it so we're not just like 30 episodes in and just like in the Edmonton artistic community exclusively.
which is focused on the Edmonton market accidentally. We don't even live there.
Yeah, it's just like a Edmonton based podcast. But Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, I mean, I think it'll just be something again, it's just a volume game. Like, we just need to be sending out like these messages, like, you know, like weekly, and we're probably gonna get like small return, but like it is what it is, and just go from there.
Okay. Yeah, that works. What else are we trying? So I've got the website. I don't know. I feel like it's decent enough for now. So I've
Yeah, for sure. I
focusing
definitely don't
more.
think I need to be anymore.
Yeah, so focusing more just getting through the last bit of the video editing here, and then I was going to start looking into, yeah, reaching out and finding a list of people. I do. I have been trying to think. I know we texted a little bit about this, but trying to think of ways to make the visuals a little more engaging. And so I know I've expressed this before, but one of my concerns is like I really don't want it just to feel like a work Zoom call. I feel like
Yeah,
so much of it is it's so easy to fall into that trap. And when I look at successful podcasts, a lot of them, pretty much all of them actually, are in-person studios, and they will even fly people out to do it in the studio, which to me tells you that there's a huge advantage to doing it in person, which obviously there it's easier to talk to someone, but the visual side is also big too. But I do wonder if I've been thinking about the wrong way where it's like maybe you lean into what the remote conversations are good at or what a remote again it's like a remote work rather than trying to mimic an in-person um, work approach online. Why not just do something completely different that takes advantage of working remotely? So your meetings, for example, don't necessarily have to be like synced up. You can work async, do more work screen
yeah,
recording, sharing. It opens up new workflows. And I've been wondering if there's a parallel with music videos and like on Spotify, like the shorts that they'll use for music to get people engaged. So it's working more as we just need like you just provide like um aesthetics, or maybe we could even like showcase the person we're interviewing's work. It would be obviously more labor intensive, but I do wonder if just having like a looping sort of screen share of like these are the this is, we're interviewing a photographer and we've just got like a loop playing of their sort of their work. So it's promoting them, and then we have captions as the prime feature. Again, just trying to
yeah.
think outside the box, and it's a weakness that we're doing this remotely, but I think maybe there's a way we can turn into a strength. I just haven't quite figured it out yet. Um, and then that would also maybe help with some of the editing where we're not trying to again rearrange squares and making it look like a computer and all this stuff, which works, but um, yeah, I'm just trying to think of a way to push it farther and try to do something unique. But yeah, just something I'm thinking about.
So this is like when we post on YouTube, is what you're saying. Like this is where we'd be adding the visuals.
Yeah, like YouTube and Spotify. Like I do think there's clearly a move by Spotify to push imagery and visuals with their basically it's a music and audio platform. So to me, that tells me that it really boosts engagement, and that's a signal that there's something there. Like you see, for example, music all comes with album art. Why? Because the visuals matter and they influence the perception of the music. And it's been around for so long that we take it for granted. But there was a time when artists would release their music without art, and someone decided to do that one time, and it was successful. And now everyone does it. It's just the standard. And I think
Yeah,
you're seeing Spotify do the same thing because they're also using those short clips as a way to a hook in the same way TikTok uses it to loop people in. So it's like you can get a quick snippet, like you can watch a 10, 20, 30-second clip and be like, oh, I want to watch the whole podcast, or it
yeah,
catches your eye. So I think if we focus more on that like hook and that imagery, that could be a way to kind of draw new users in or new listeners, because that is obviously the problem we're facing right now is how do you get that flywheel going. And I am wondering if providing visuals, and those visuals are maybe based around the person we're interviewing, so it's also showcasing them, could be kind of a fun way to make it eye catching, but also unique and more relevant to the person we're interviewing. But that's just one idea. And I don't think we have to do that right away. I think we've got bigger problems, but something I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point that, like, I don't know, we are gonna have to be remote podcasts, at least definitely in the early days, so it's like, how can we leverage that as a I don't know, as a positive rather than it just being, like, something that makes us worse than the in-person podcast? Like, can we put our efforts to make it even, like, I don't know, use the strength of, making it remote, so I'm definitely on the same page, and I do think like, I know what you're saying of cycling the, like, work of whoever we're interviewing. I think that's a good point. I do think, like, I think you've done a really good job with, like, the stars kind of in the background. Like, to me, that's kind of interesting, at least more than just, like, a typical podcast. So, like, I don't know if it needs to be just anything that's, like, different that might catch people's attention, I think is,
Yeah, so right now I'm mimicking the Windows 95. That's actual Windows 95 screensaver.
Oh,
Authentic.
okay.
But yeah, no, that's essentially right now I've got it. The idea is it's mimicking you or using a Windows 95 like vintage computer. You start it up, podcast playing on it, and then it switches to screensaver, trying to add some visual elements. We could even keep that and maybe do imagery just streaming across the screen, again, showcasing their work. And maybe not everyone has work to showcase.
Yeah.
My one concern is just like obviously that could get pretty make editing harder, which is a big concern. I think if we want to keep pumping out content frequently and
Yeah.
also have time to do our kind of side projects and businesses that we want to also launch on our own time and not just turn into full-time podcasters.
Podcast.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, everything you're saying I think makes sense to me. I think, one question I sort of have is like, what is sort of a cadence with interviews that you'd like to keep? Because I'm almost like my thought is like at least once a week. Cause like, I don't know, I'm also just like enjoying the process. Like, I think it's, obviously I want to make a good podcast, but I'm also just, selfishly just enjoying talking to people, meeting people, the process of reaching out and things like that. So, I mean, my thought is if we can do like at least once a week, that's pretty good. But I don't know. What do you think?
yeah, I think once a week is a really good target. I'm happy to put like this is one of those areas where rather than pushing perfectionism over editing, I would rather like pedal to the metal, try to get as many as we can and keep accelerating. And worst case scenario, say it's too much, one of us can just do the interview for that one. It's like we don't have to. I think it's better
Yeah.
to keep pushing the volume. And if one episode we put out and it's just captions because we didn't have time, we've just got to end up with a huge backlog. Like to me, that's the perfect problem to have. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a business. You scale that. So many people, especially in tech, like they will engineer their app to handle scaling to like millions of users. It's like, but that's not really the problem. The problem you're facing is you need to get users, and if you do get users, you can just tear it down and rebuild the thing. And to me, I would rather have so many interviews lined up that we've got a backlog and we can't keep up with editing. And you hit that, and you either pay someone to do editing or you do less editing, where it's more you're pushing it out with maybe less interesting visuals, but you're just getting out that content. That's a great problem to have. And so I'm happy to go as fast as we can. And I think we can also adjust too. It's like, oh, we've got someone lined up. One of us can't make it. The other one can do it, right? Like it doesn't have to be so rigid with a structured format because we're not doing this in person. We don't have advertisers. We don't have any of this sort of burden. I think we can just really prioritize volume.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like having a big backlog and like I'm almost of the mindset of like, yeah, like I'm sure we have people in mind that we want to interviewing, but like interviewing is just like a skill and a muscle that we have to build. So it's just like whatever we can get, I think is like um, it's worth like just talking and even if we wanted to bring on guests like we've had before, like I know we talked about like it would be fun to just like have an episode with Nick and Thomas on it. Um, I think is like a good idea too. It could just sort of be like more of a conversation. So, yeah, I'm definitely of the same mindset that like let's just get stuff in the hopper and then we can like, I don't know, then release it as we have time, but it'd be a good problem to have.
So as we're doing this one, because when we do ours, we flip the camera off, and in a way, I find it easier to talk, and it like shows the symbol when someone's volume is on, and
Yeah.
I'm almost finding it easier to detect when you start talking. 'Cause
So,
there's not a
like
latency, like, when there's a latency when you're using the visual, right? Because if we're like, if our cameras were on, I would be looking at your face when you and like, "Oh, he's about to talk," but there's a latency there, right? And I'm
yeah.
finding it actually easier to have a smoother conversation with the cameras off,
Yeah.
or is
Okay,
this
so
just
you
me?
think, like to be honest, I wasn't really looking at the Zoom screen, but or the Google Meet screen, but, um, yeah,
Maybe
I
I
mean
just have facial blindness, I can't detect emotions.
I mean, again, I do think, like, when I've reached out to people, like, I've said, like, "Yeah, we just go cameras off," which I think is honestly, like, makes it a little bit easier because 'cause you're just like, "Oh, we're just having a phone conversation," which is, like, a little
Yeah,
more
that's I guess that's where I was getting at. I was like, "Do we would it be better for guests where we just say we'll just flip our cameras off?" And it also makes editing easier.
Yeah.
Um, and we can just try that maybe. Um, or is
Yeah,
that
I mean,
awkward where
I
if especially with people we haven't met and then you lose the kind of some of the human element?
hmm, I don't know if I'd be concerned about losing a human element. I guess it'd be like it might be kind of like I think just the fact though that, like, they have no clue what we look like, it might because we don't have it on the
Well,
website or
don't mean
anything.
we could have, like, during our intro phase, like,
Oh,
it'll
yeah.
just be like, "Oh, we flip our cameras off now." But I guess I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a guest, and I could see how maybe that feels odd, but I'm also saying that it feels like the conversation might be easier remotely.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't think I have a strong opinion on this either way.
Okay.
I can see both.
Yeah, I might just be, thinking too deep into it.
Um, yeah, yeah, but I mean, we can play with it.
The other thing I've been wondering is if we, like, doing some in person, it might be fun to do that where, I don't know, if we're traveling or I don't know, I'm sure there's people in Toronto and you're like, "Oh, we can just, like, meet up, give them a mic, um, and then I'd call in or something." I'm not sure if that would be I know that can be really tricky when you have only part of the people remote and part of the people in person. Um, but that's something else I've been thinking about is if you are reaching out to someone and you're, say, trying to have a coffee chat, why not just turn it into an episode, right? Um, so
So I guess my
maybe
concern, like, how would you like, I guess we could just go to their house because I feel like they might be like, if I invite them to my condo, that might be a little strange.
it's just inviting Instagram models to your condo exclusively.
Yeah, I wanna
Um,
know how you set up your Instagram account.
no, I was
Um,
thinking it would be somewhere like a, neutral space. I guess that's a good point. I just assumed, like, you would get a co-working space and you could rent a room, right? And
yeah, that's true. I mean, I do have, like, the big road thing, and I actually do have 2 mics, so
yeah, so I feel like you go to a WeWork, rent a room for an hour, and you can have a conversation in person, and maybe those are ones that are just work better if it's just one person, like, we just skip whoever's remote and it's just a one-on-one, or maybe we try it with, say, someone we know, so if it goes wrong, it's not such a big deal, but we could try it with one person remote and the 2 people in the WeWork room, but just something I could see being effective, especially, like, I don't know, say you go to Japan or something, and that's gonna be tough to line up a remote interview because the time zones are so different, then you got internet lag that's, like, quite bad in many cases if you don't have a stable connection
oh,
when
yes,
and you could just do it
Stereotype,
in
I know that.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean,
It's
just
not
like
something we have
getting
to do right now, but I'm just thinking that could be cool. and it might help us, sorry, with meeting people that are outside, because like not everyone's on like online or easy to connect through online. So like I don't know, a restaurant owner or something might not really be as much of interested in doing like remote interviews, especially if they're in different cities. But versus like I don't know, Sumamai or whatever, you go down and you're like, hey, I want to do an episode, and then it's a little bit more professional too if they're going to a studio.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad idea. It's definitely like the thought of it, it's a little more like intimidating, but I think that's kind
My
of the
my
point of
main concern is like as we tried before with the the Road Connect app, it's just like the technical side I think becomes much more important because if you're trying to interview and do the tech stuff, I think we're finding it's actually not quite as simple when something doesn't connect or something doesn't work. Happens. It's a lot more um, moving parts, I guess.
Yeah, so the good news is that, like, the thing I have is, like, pretty simple, so I honestly would feel pretty confident, like, to do it, because like, I've done it
Are you
before where I've had 2 people on mics and then attached to like, for the MK1 podcast, like, Steve and I did it a bunch of times where we were in the same room. We were both on mics, and then we had it connected to, like, a laptop. Um,
how did that work so you didn't catch the other person's volume or like talking on your own mic?
I don't know, the
Oh,
mics are pretty good, like, it was just never an issue.
interesting. Yeah. Okay. No, that's yeah, I think you've got the equipment. I would probably have to buy might have to buy some, but I'm willing to do that if it works. But anyways, that's something too where I think we could take it to the next step because yeah, I finally did book a trip to SF for
Oh, yeah?
end of February here. Go down there for
Oh,
a
nice.
month. So
Oh, wow.
um figured I'd finally do it. But then I was like, well, if you're talking to people, it kind of seems I don't know, it's definitely would make me very uncomfortable to be like, hey, want to come on my podcast? Um, and it's just like me trying to figure out how to record in a WeWork, but it's probably, I mean, worst case scenario, they think I'm an idiot, which I mean,
Yeah,
not really the end of the world.
yeah, or anything new.
Yeah,
Um,
pretty used to
so
it.
yeah, yeah, so when you're down there, is your hope to, like, get people to interview when you're there?
Yeah, so like I wanted to again just get out of my comfort zone and network, and obviously the tech scene's really big there, and the founding tech scene as well. So that's definitely something that's on my bucket list of things I want to do is start build some apps, definitely in like the legal tech space, which I think we've talked a bit about before.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, I don't really. It was more just I was going to go to Austin, but then in Austin, I basically would have had to rent a car, and I wanted to do a longer stay. And then I was like, well, for pretty much the price of a place plus a car, I could just go to Austin or sorry, go to SF and it's walkable. Um, so I'd still like to do Austin at some point in the near future too, but I know in Austin you can very easily rent podcast studios, but just got me thinking. I'm like, well, why not just do the podcasts down there too, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, so you just have an Airbnb?
yeah, yeah, I got an Airbnb. It's
Nice,
so feel free to pull up if you want.
nice. Is it, like, in a condo building or what?
Yeah, got a condo building. It's got a kitchen, so got it for a month. So, and then
Oh,
you know
sweet.
what else is funny is I was like it's not really much more expensive than going for 2 weeks because like you get a monthly discount or whatever. So
Oh,
it's definitely tougher to find a place. So it took me a while, and I'm not the best at that. But yeah, it's like not really that much more expensive than if you go for a shorter period of time because it yeah you just get like the discount. So it's like kind of a good way to travel if you can swing it is just go a little bit longer. But yeah, we'll see how it
yeah,
is.
interesting. No, that'd be really cool. Yeah, no, maybe I'll check it out. You said you're beginning end of February?
end of February to, um, I wanna say March 27th. The other thing though is, like, flights. It's like trying to book flights. There are so many hidden fees, and it's the most aggravating thing ever. It's honestly unreal. You
I
can
mean,
easily double the price of a flight. Like, so to go to SF from Calgary is a 2.5-hour flight,
yeah,
and it was like $1,000 every flight. It was like actually 1,100 on like WestJet, and I was
yeah,
like, "This is insane. It's a 2.5-hour flight, and this is like should be like a pretty popular route." I ended up getting one cheaper, and fortunately, because I was able to be flexible with my dates, I could like schedule it around when I could get good flights.
yeah,
Um, but it was hard, especially if you had more fixed dates that you had to go on. Like you would end up paying so much money, and then everything is like the taxes and fees, and then they have baggage. Is WestJet just doesn't include baggage in anything, so it's like $200 off the top right there. And then if you want seats too, um, but yeah, it's just insane. Like you look at the like I'll be using Google Flights, and they have like if basically all the flight deals, it'll be like that ly.com or whatever that Chinese website is.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like pretty much every good price is from them. And if you like it'll be say 450 through their site, but obviously you got to add all the extras, and WestJet will be $1,200. And it's like, what? Like I don't really I prefer to book directly through the airlines because if something goes wrong, you can like get it fixed easier, but it's just really really painful right now.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I know we say we don't wanna complain about Canada, but welcome to Canada, brother. Um,
Are you going
yeah.
to going got any plans to go to Phoenix or anything?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go to Arizona, in a week, I think. My only I don't know, I do wanna take, like, more exotic trips because I feel like I always just go to the US throughout the year, and then, like, it's, like, October, and I'm like, "Oh, I haven't gone anywhere," so then I'll just book, like, a week somewhere, so I am chatting with a friend about maybe doing Costa Rica, maybe doing Colombia just for, like, 4 days or something like that, but Costa Rica is insanely expensive for the hotels, like, the flights are easy, and then if
Really?
you want, like, a decent hotel, you're looking at, like, 500 a night. Um, Bogota is decently cheap, but I don't know. I guess my biggest concern is like I'm competing for sprinting and stuff in March, and I'm just like, do I want to like go and like there's probably like 50-50 chance you just get like sick. I guess I'm assuming it's like Mexico City where like everyone gets really sick. Maybe it's a bit better, but like I guess that's somewhat my concern. But yeah, I'll either go to Arizona for a bit or just like try and book something a little more interesting. But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
How long is the flight to Bogota?
It's only like 6 hours from Toronto.
That's not too bad.
Yeah,
But
it's not too bad.
that's still yeah, I guess if you only go for 4 days, so you're thinking
Yeah.
just like if it's longer, it just takes too much planning and you won't do it?
Yeah, honestly, I just, like I'm so bad at it. It's just, like, the thought of, like, a 3-week trip is maybe I should use, like, AI or something to plan it, but just, like, the thought of planning out a 3-week trip
It's
for some
so
reason
hard.
it's
I don't like it took me like 3 weeks to plan this one, and I was like and then you're
honestly,
like
you just
trying to
need a girl.
understand neighborhoods.
Like, girls are way better at it, but yeah, like, it honestly can be, like, a full-time job. There's just 10,000,000 decisions to make, like, where you wanna go. Like, you almost need someone to just, like, put a gun to your head and, like, book the trip for you or something.
Yeah, this is something I'm trying to get better at is focus on one task at a time because I definitely jump around and put a whole bunch of stuff on my plate and then don't accomplish any of them because I'm jumping around too much. So I'm really this is my what I'm focusing on is like have your items, but then like prioritize them and just be, I can't do anything else until this is done. So
Yeah.
that's what
See,
I'm trying to do a little bit more of.
yes, I should do more of that, but I also find, like, I just know myself that, like, I feel like if I was just doing one thing, like, I think I would go crazy, like, I operate best when I'm doing, like, 5 things at like, proactively in my life at once, I guess, but, like, I don't know, like, for sure, you can't go, like, deep on any of them, so you're never gonna become an expert at any of them, but, like, I don't know. I think just like for my personality, like I don't even think I would want to be an expert on like one thing. It's just like not how my brain works. It's just like
That's
it would just
that
like
sounds like amazing cope for not putting work in. Like,
well,
well, I
yeah,
just don't
I
wanna
don't
learn
know.
math because I'm more of a generalist. No, I'm kidding though, but I know what
No,
you're saying. Like, what
like
I guess to
yeah,
clarify, I'm like, what I'm saying is, like, I'll time box. So I'll be like, I need to focus on
yeah,
this
I get that. Yeah.
and not being like jumping like, I will literally jump from one task and I will open my browser or phone to complete that task and get distracted somehow in
Oh,
between that 5-second interval of like opening a screen and I'll see something and I'll go down a rabbit hole of watching, I don't know, YouTube videos on quantum holograph theory. And then I can't even remember what I originally was trying to do.
no, I know. Like, I just like, I guess probably what I was more so saying is like, I know when I started my career in finance, I was like, oh, I want to be like a finance guy. But like any good finance job, right? I mean, I'm sure it's like any like tech's probably the same, where it's like, if you want a good high paying one, it is like 80 hours a week. And I think that would just like, I would hate my life so much if like I was just doing one thing for 80 hours a week. It just seems like hell to me.
Yeah, why did you what was your original vision for the finance route?
I mean, I just, like, thought, like, I really wanted to be, like, a banker and just, like, spend, like, 30, 40 years in a bank and just, like, make lots of money, and then from there, I was like, I don't know, like, every person is just like, "Oh, private equity, that's like starting your own business, running your own business," and then you, like, learn more about it, and it's just, like, the most retarded or it's it's just, like, the dumbest thing in the world. It's just, like, I don't know, these people, like, former bankers just, like, financially engineer, like, a business and ruin it, like, you're not running a business. Um, so but, like, in my head, it was just, like that was, like because I think there is I d I guess, like, for good and bad, there's stigmas with, like, any job. So, like, I think in my head, like, I guess just, like, having a good finance job was just, like, some, like, I don't know if you'll call it social proof or validity or whatever. But then, like, even when I started to realize, like, I didn't like it, I was just like, "Oh, how can I still work in finance, but, like, not do anything finance related?" And it was just like I was like, "Oh, eventually I just need to not do it because like, I don't really like it that much." But, like, it's I don't know, it's like when you get anchored to it, I guess, because like, it's just like that's what you studied, and you're like, "That's what I do." And then time goes on, you're like, "Oh, I really don't like doing it that much." So you need to just, like, be able to break away, which, I mean, it is tough because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, invested, like, 10 years of my life into the career." But when you think about it, like, your career's, like, probably, like, at least 40 years. Like, it's a pretty small amount of time to just be like, "Oh, I don't wanna pivot." But it's like, it really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I also find you can usually skill stack too. It's not like, for example, for mine, I went to law school and then I pivoted into tech. And now I'm like doing product design work, which obviously seems unrelated, but you still skill stack it in the sense that I could now work in legal and tech and applying those things. And there's not really anyone that can do that same sort of thing because it's such an unusual career track. But I definitely hear you on the taking the path and it's not quite what you expect because that's why I went into business in an undergrad. It's like, oh, I want to run a business, and then
Yeah,
they tell you like, oh yeah, go to like it seems like oh take the business program if you like business, and it's like no, that's what you do if you want to be a middle manager at like a corporation. If you
oh,
actually want to
yeah,
like start a business, you should just like learn an actual skill. Like I would have been
totally.
better off going into the trades. Honestly, I probably would have had like
Oh, yeah.
you learn a skill and then you can start a business so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Thomas, like, he's, like, I know, like, a billion people who went to business school, and, like, none of them have started a business, and I know, like, one person who actually, I know 2 people who went to photography school, and they both have started a business, so it's like, I don't know, it kinda just shows that, like, I don't know, business school is not for starting a business.
Yeah, definitely not, but it is yeah, I wish I could go back and slap myself when I was making that decision, but
Oh, yeah, there's, like, a lot of decisions, like, I remember when I did my MBA, I was, like, kind of debating about, like, trying to do in the US versus Canada. I was like, "Ah, it's not a big difference, like, I'll just go to Toronto," and it's like, "Oh, man, that was a pretty consequential decision."
yeah, you can't do that game too much because It could
Oh, totally.
lead you to some
You know,
dark places.
oh, for sure. I mean, I always just tell myself, it's like, "Well, maybe I would've got in a car crash if I did that or something," like, who knows? You get, like, stuck in a traffic jam and you're like, "Oh, maybe if I didn't, I would've, got in a car crash," so
Yeah, this was God telling me to not do it.
yeah, I guess so.
If I transferred to the Houston office, I'd be, dead.
I would've made so much more money, I would've blown it on a Ferrari, and then it would've been an awesome life.
You'd probably have a cocaine addiction or something, and you just ruin
Yeah,
your life. It's good it didn't
yeah.
happen.